Hello, and welcome to my review of Outlast 2. I am criMe, and today with the help of Lone Wolfie, I will attempt to give my all-around honest opinion of this game. If you'd like to go check out our Outlast 2 livestream, the link will be in the description below. So let's start out with the basics. Outlast 2 is the predecessor of Outlast, a first-person survival horror that impressed many horror gamers within the community. Countless gamers have listed Outlast as one of the scariest games of all time, with IGN giving it an 8.8 out of 10. With Outlast setting the ballpoint high, Red Barrel's, the makers of Outlast, had a lot of work to do so that Outlast 2 would be even more gruesome and terrifying. I must admit, I have never played the first Outlast, but I have watched numerous Let's Plays. In fact, Outlast holds a special place in my heart, as it was the first ever Let's Play I watched, and of course, Markiplier happened to be the one playing it. Since then, I must have watched Wolfie play it about 30 times. I know the boss encounters inside out, and the best hiding spots, yet I still won't play it. I'm so scared to play Outlast that every time the controller is thrust into my hands by Wolfie, I end up tossing the controller back after 5 minutes and dashing for a quick underwear change. No matter how many times I experience the same footage, Chris Walker will never not be petrifying. Even though I've never played the damn thing in its entirety, I can appreciate a great horror when I see one. The story is highly engrossing, the characters are diverse, and each one has a complex background behind their twisted personality. The DLC, Whistleblower, is even better than Outlast. Eddie Gluskin is a character who makes your skin crawl the very moment you first hear him say, "Die." With Outlast and its DLC setting such a high standard, I had no doubts in my mind that Outlast 2 would outshine its predecessor. Oh, how wrong I was. Outlast 2 does a wonderful job of building tension, but after huge chunks of playtime spent with nothing much happening, it loses its scare factor. I spent more time being scared of the idea of being scared than the gameplay actually scaring me. There was one character in Outlast 2 that really made me feel uneasy, and that was Marta. But she was extremely short-lived, her encounters were far too short and too few, and didn't fill me with the same dread as previous Outlast villains.
Oh, you fucking bitch! What do I do? That was the woman. Nah. What do I do? Run round it. Oh, no! Oh, she's got me. Oh, no, shit.
Her ability to run fast did make her, at points, intimidating, which was a clever way to prevent the player from just sprinting away. But hiding in barrels just felt like a cheap way to get around her. I wanted to see more of Marta, be able to hide in creative ways so that she didn't learn your movements, and once you got around her, I'd like to see her find a new way to get to you so the player had to change their strategy, not just hide in this barrel for a bit until she goes away so I can run to the objective. And God forbid you get lost. In this game, you get lost, you die.
I'm dead. No, please!
The other villain I was very excited to meet was Sullivan Noth, a creepy reverend whose charismatic voice you hear bellowing from the intercom throughout Templegate.
We stand in opposition to the Antichrist.
I want to meet him and talk to him.
We hope to be them. We cannot only try to be.
Only when you do meet him right at the very end, he just kills himself and that's it. What a way to build up a character, pique my interest, and then let me down at the last second. The transvestite Val, who apparently is a woman but looks and sounds more like a camp gay man.
God doesn't love you. Not like I do.
Oh my god. Oh, no! Get off me, you fucking little twat.
Was a confusing character, and I still don't understand her role other than bulking the game out a bit. She really doesn't add anything to the story and is like Eddie Gluskin Part 2. Her character was interesting, don't get me wrong, and I guess she was just another crazed fanatic, but then again, there's no real character development. At least Chris Walker had a purpose to his killing that was linked to the main plotline. Outlast 2 tried so hard to make you feel like you were in an open setting where you could roam around, but the game itself was very linear. There was no room for deviations and you couldn't just stumble onto the right path. You had to go searching for it, and if you didn't notice the small blood stains or you got disoriented with the copy and paste scenery, you could be stuck in an area for quite some time, though mostly it was straightforward and you followed the path the developers carved out for you. Now I loved the hiding mechanic for Outlast. Stuck in a locker, hoping your enemies wouldn't check was gut-wrenching. Timing it just right so you could sneak through an area undetected felt really challenging and had your heart racing, even though I wasn't playing the game. When I played Outlast 2, I ended up running 80% of the time. There was no strategy to playing this game. You ran wildly, dodging enemies and hoping that you were heading the right way. As I said previously, head the wrong way, and you die. There is nothing scary about sprinting past a ton of hillbillies. There just isn't. And if I can play this game and be mildly uncomfortable, then it isn't scary. I found Alien Isolation to be more terrifying than this, and that was extremely repetitive. If this game was going to be fast-paced, why didn't they include some sort of block or melee mechanic? Outlast 2 completely takes away from the hiding strategy bar a few encounters. So, if that was the direction they were going to take, why didn't they include at least some combat? Maybe be able to pick up a tool on the floor and stun an enemy, or watch it shatter into pieces as we see how immune they really are? During these running stages, you don't get a chance to explore or appreciate the game. You just blast your way through it with no real defense. The main objective is to run from A to B. It takes the core of the game, that real horror element, right out of it. Now, I'm not saying we aren't given the opportunity to hide, because we are, but the style of play doesn't force us to do so. I'd have preferred a shorter game, but at a slower pace with less running. I want more stumbling about, wondering how to get past an enemy with little nooks and crannies to hide in. This game did not have me on edge. I wanted to feel like my character had to crawl in the mud to survive, that sudden noises could attract enemies, and running was a last resort when put in a sticky situation. Make it so I must hide before reaching the objective, so that I have to trick the villain into moving in one direction so I can get where I need to go. For God's sake, why couldn't we even throw stones to distract them? All things someone would do if they were in that situation. Don't get me wrong, running away from something chasing you is scary, especially when you're running to a safe zone like a room, a vent, or a hiding spot. But running past something? That isn't. The one thing Outlast did really well was looking at how far someone would go to survive with only a camera to aid them against something they could not fight. It gives us environments and scenarios that as humans in that position we could see ourselves doing the same thing to survive. Outlast 2 does feel like a cop-out. It removes the humanity and takes unrealistic to a new level. A professional cameraman needing AA batteries in a town with very little to no technology. Running past enemies with weapons and taking multiple hits only to bandage it up and be fine. I hate it all. They built on what was already existent in Outlast and ruined it. Instead of changing it up and giving us a whole new experience, they used the same game mechanics just with different environments, flashy new unneeded additions such as a camera microphone and the ability to run faster, and then running out of stamina was just an annoying inconvenience. And though I suppose it brings reality to the game, it didn't make me fear what was chasing me. More of a, oh, no stamina? Well, I'm gonna die. For a game that's based on running through encounters, it really just pisses you off.
I myself was personally disappointed with Outlast 2. With Outlast, I was constantly on the edge of my seat, needing the loo every 5 minutes. The bloody game had me so scared that I could only play 15 minutes of it a day. With Outlast 2, it was the complete opposite. Outlast 2 made no sense whatsoever. I think the thing that annoyed me the most was the whole Jessica scenario. Why put that in a game? I get that they needed to bulk up the game some more with just that little bit of extra content, but it was really irrelevant. I didn't really care about Blake's traumatizing past and how it has affected him in his future. It didn't even partner with the story, for God's sake. It just made it a lot more confusing. There was also the game's ending, which was, well, rubbish. For it to even make a little bit of sense, you have to go read the Murkoff account, which is an Outlast comic book series. Even after a wasted 10 to 15 minutes of my life that I will never get back, it was pointless. It still made no sense. What is the point of making a sequel when there is no story? I have to give it to Red Barrels on this point though. They really did an excellent job on graphics and the gameplay. The fact that you have to save your energy for running makes it that much more scary when running through the cornfields full of hillbillies. The camera's hearing feature was a bonus too. To be able to hide yet hear about where your enemies are gave you that much bigger of an advantage. Also, the bandages. You have to use them at the perfect time before an enemy shoves their machete up your butthole. But all in all, did those features of the game make it one of the scariest games of the year? No, it didn't. Although the features had their advantages, they also had their disadvantages that came with it. It makes the game so easy just to run through. You can slip past enemies without them even hearing your sweat chafing against your legs.
The story is what made me dislike this game more than anything else. Outlast had a clear, concise story, and its DLC Whistleblower only gave it more depth. I mean, for Christ's sake, it had us watch a short movie about the story's plot within the game. The documents you could pick up whilst playing the game only enriched the story, but didn't necessarily tell it. You could play the entire game without reading any of the additional documents and understand the story perfectly fine. So in Outlast 2, as we found documents further into the game, we stopped reading them, mostly because they were long and quite difficult to understand due to the Shakespearean way in which they were written. Don't get me wrong, I love piecing together a story bit by bit and watching it unravel in front of me. But to only be able to understand the plot of the game by reading all of the pages provided just seems to be lazy writing. It's almost as if they wanted to include Project Walrider into the game, but wasn't sure how to do so, so they added that stupid blinding white light and then threw in a bunch of pages to accompany it, along with the comic Wolfie previously mentioned. And worst of all, our character doesn't even address it. His wife being pregnant? Just accept it. It's raining blood? Oh, that's completely normal. There's no probing from our character, and the villains don't seem to want to share either. In one point of the game, we see a radio tower, something Blake hints towards as an objective, but we don't get to go there. It's obvious that that's the source of the light, and it can be speculated that Murkoff Industries are running Walrider tests there, but it's never addressed again by anyone. I wanted to go there, have a peek behind the madness, see their true goals behind this. However, it is forgotten as soon as it is seen, a query in the back of our minds. This leads to a cliche, depressing ending that any writer who thinks this is a good ending for anything needs to be shot. At this point, the players can't be sure what's real and what isn't. It isn't clarified at all within the game, but I think it's safe to assume that Blake is batshit crazy by the end. With a bloody baby in his arm, he stumbles towards an apocalyptic ending. Everyone is dead. By what and how, we don't know, and Blake just hallucinates for one last time. It ends with a prayer from Jessica after she exclaims she'll never let Blake go.
Is that it? Are you fucking kidding me? What the fuck? What the fucking game was that?
There is no resolution, no true ending. We will never find out what was happening, why the town had an obsession with killing children, what the blinding light truly did to the townspeople, and if Blake survived. I am 100% certain that this will be followed with a DLC. It needs one. This story is unpolished and unfinished. I think it's what annoyed me so much about this game. DLCs add depth. They shouldn't finish off a story which should have been completed within the main game. Again, referencing back to Whistleblower, it adds more to the story's depth, but the story of Outlast is already there and beautifully done. It's most likely that the developers made Whistleblower as an afterthought to enrich the lore they'd already created, whereas for Outlast 2 they created an ambiguous story, completely unfinished, so that they could sell you a DLC just to enable you to find out what the fuck is going on. I wouldn't have minded a DLC if it gave us an extra perspective to the events that take place in Outlast 2, like playing as a villain, but not because the cum stain of a game needs one. It's a piss take. Just because Outlast is an amazing game, it does not give Red Barrels a get out of jail free card. No matter how much the fans desperately want this game to work, it doesn't. I think the small team that make up Red Barrel spent so much time in making the game look visually stunning that they pushed aside gameplay, level design, and failed to create a really gripping story. This game would be 10 times better if they devolved to the same graphics as Outlast, but improved on the areas that Outlast failed in, such as repetitiveness and lack of map variation. I understand that games like Resident Evil set a high standard within the horror industry and can push small developers aside, but I don't care about Resident Evil 7. It has nothing on the first Outlast, and we know that Red Barrels can create something as good as Outlast, then why can't they follow it up here and make an even better horror game? Fuck. If you want fancy, beautiful graphics and scenery, then fine, but don't have it take away from the gameplay because all that was focused on was the graphics. Good graphics do not equate to a good game. It's like setting up a porno with a high quality camera, good looking guy, an attractive girl, and then after 20 minutes of foreplay, you can't get hard and neither of them finish. It's just disappointing and unsatisfying.
That's remotely disgusting, Panda. In conclusion, I think this game is highly overrated, and I would personally give this game a 6.5 out of 10. Outlast 2 is graphically stunning. It has its interesting characters, includes some really interesting gameplay features. However, it fails to provide a gripping story. There are no real scares and the horror element of this game is ruined by running. Don't get me wrong, I mean, if you love horror games, then sure, go ahead and buy it, but only when this game comes out on sale.
Thank you everybody for watching. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. And I will see you next time. Goodbye everybody.